Here on GoJo and Golic, I'm Claudia Bellafato in the Boston DraftKings studio. We've got a great show for you here on this Monday, starting with Cup or Collapse. A lot on the line in Oilers-Panthers Game 7. Scotty Money Scheffler wins yet again, rakes in another huge purse. And will Klay stay? Are the Warriors getting ready to rebuild?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and the aforementioned Claudia Bellafato holding it down for us in that DraftKings studio. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and more. We will get to an exciting weekend in the world of sports. The NHL giving us the gift, manna from heaven. We all get to say it now, the two best words in sports, Game 7. God, it feels good to get that cliche out into the universe here. We will get to plenty of that, and we will certainly get to what the future could look like. Are we on the verge of one of the biggest collapses in the history of sports, given where the Florida Panthers started, given the stage of all of this series? Dad, that's obviously very important, but we also played a bunch of golf this week.
Yes, we did. Our Golic Family Foundation had our third annual SubPar Classic, and yes, it's SubPar because most of us stink. And it was a great weekend. We had the party Saturday night and golf on Sunday, and it seems like we ended up doing exactly what you want to do at these events, is raise a lot of money. I mean, that's what this whole thing is about, is raising money. But along those lines, it's not like there can't be a story within a story. And with this, it's like so many people, agree to come and play in this, celebrities, the people that pay to come in there and help these charities and organizations. But there's the competition, right? The friendly competition, or maybe not so friendly, of you and I. Who wins? Who has the better group?
Well, I was going to say, this is where it comes and becomes difficult, because you want to make this a one-on-one competition in a team sport. This is like when it used to be Brady versus Peyton Manning, and everyone would focus on those battles, forgetting there were entire teams of people and other circumstances around this entire event.
So I understand why you're saying that, and why this is what we call deflecting, talking about the others and teammates and all that, because I beat you.
No, your team beat my team.
Yeah.
That is how this was not some one-on-one playoff. This wasn't Kim versus Scotty Scheffler where you and I got to do this at the end.
Right.
This was a team event. And you know what? Shame on you for taking what was an incredible weekend of charity and fellowship and friendship, people coming together to help the South Bend community with all the great groups that we got to work with here, the money that was raised at the party the night before, the auction event where tons of people were able to come out. We had it in the stadium concourse. It was incredible. And then a round of golf where we stayed largely dry and all got to know each other a little bit better, enjoy some great food and beverage. You want to focus on petty things like this, honestly says a lot to me about your character in ways that are surprising to me as a son that's revered you for so long. To now see this side of you pop up here, it's tough. It's ugly.
Deflecting. Deflecting. Claudia, seriously, jump in on this. I mentioned right in the beginning about all the good that was done, and then I mentioned...
Well, you breezed past it awfully quick.
It's not mutually exclusive, right, where we can only talk about one thing. It was a wonderful weekend, as I said. I think we raised a lot of money, as I said. And there's, interior kind of competitions, as I said, and I whooped your ass.
I don't know if you call that your team beat our team by 2 strokes.
I think it was more than that.
No, I don't
we
think
were 9
was.
under.
Nah, I don't think you were. I talked to some of your teammates.
I saw my teammates.
Saw the way the pen changed their hands a few times. It's just all the stuff you got to watch out.
Claudia, am I being petty?
I need to see a scorecard, but GoJo, I do feel if it was the other way around. You both have the competitive spirit. You did a great thing, but in the end, it is about competition. And I didn't see you with a cigar, so Senior just sort of is looks like the cooler part. But but not to be mean, but like just in this scenario, the cooler Mike of the two.
Be mean. Go ahead and be mean.
Yeah, no, you are being mean, Claudia, here.
Mean.
This is something we're going to have to talk about post-show here. This level of betrayal was not something that I had on the menu for this morning. So outside of that, though, in all seriousness,
it was great.
It was an awesome weekend. A lot of your former teammates came back for this. A lot of my former teammates came back. Some other Notre Dame greats, Brady Quinn, our buddy Jess Matana right here from the DraftKings Network and Meadowlark universe.
She won a closest to the pin award.
She did. Went out there balling. So
did very well. But it is very neat. Your old coach, Charlie Weiss, came to the event. There's a great picture of all of you guys who played under Charlie Weiss, you and Jake and a bunch of others. That was very cool to see. But it's just nice because we're a lot of times on the other end of this where we get invited to these events. But this one, we have to try and call upon people and take up their weekend. And so many people come and say yes and take time out of their weekend to come as celebrities. And then the people that come, and buy for the rounds and get the auction items. I mean, because, again, this is one where you can just flat out admit we're trying to get in everybody's pocket.
Yeah. and so, for anyone that was unfamiliar around here with the show, the tournament and every part of the weekend goes to benefit 5 different charities locally in the South Bend, Indiana area, an area where you guys live for about half the year now in every given year. We obviously all went to school here over a span of decades now in South Bend. So the whole idea of the tournament was to take what's existed for Notre Dame athletes and for that community for so long and make sure we keep bridging the gap to the town around here that supports a lot of us while we're on campus. And even after that, when you come back around here, you always feel like this place has your back. And so this is just us wanting to do the same the other way.
It's a cool thing. It's like a reunion, too, like with people from mostly it's Notre Dame players, former players, but I brought in a couple of my best buddies when I was playing in the NFL, Jeff Eagles, Dave Alexander, who played with me in Philly. So it's just good to reminisce with everybody and then also reminisce of the fact that you went out with your friends last night. Some were in your group. Were you talking about the fact that I beat you? Because that's what it comes back to.
They actually weren't in my group.
They weren't in your group.
No, my friends were busy cheating and almost winning in another group
right.
During the course of that weekend. It is interesting because it becomes all of my friends now coming back because we're all in our mid-30s. So I'm looking at pictures of their babies or hearing stories about their babies. And when your friends come back, I'm seeing pictures of me as a baby. Like your buddy Dave Alexander, who came back and you played with in Philadelphia, is showing me pictures of him and baby me hanging out when you guys are in Philadelphia. So the through line of children seems to be the strong trend at these. But it really always, because he came around and same thing, when people encounter us in person, we've had this happen in work, life, and otherwise, people go, when you're both around, younger Mike, what do I call you?
Right.
And all of your friends who met me when I was a baby want to call me Mikey and feel badly about it. And I'm like, y'all are grandfathered in. You're good. You can still call me Mikey. It doesn't have to be Junior or anything else, but there's always that discomfort. And I realized it too, where like, I'm staring at these people, the Feagles who you talked about, Jeff Feagles, longtime NFL punter. I've known them forever, but they knew me when I was a kid. It's got to be so weird having to treat me like an adult now. I struggle with that with some of my younger friends, some of the people that were like Sydney's age or our cousins. I can't imagine what it's like for them having to shake my hand and act like I'm a fully functioning person.
Yeah, even Dave was saying, what do I call you? Yeah. I feel weird calling you Mikey. And you were like, just call me Mikey. It's what you called me all my life. It's so the two weirdest things was that, because we wanted to recreate that picture of you sitting in Dave's lap like you were a baby and he was holding you and having him hold you then.
Wasn't I like biting his thumb though? That would have been kind of weird.
That would have been that. I wasn't going down that road. You had your finger in his mouth. I wasn't going down that road. And the other shock to all, especially my friends, and quite honestly, even yours, is Sydney holding a baby.
Yeah,
Sydney having a baby.
That one freaks everyone
The
out.
baby Sydney having a baby I think freaks everybody out.
Yes, exactly. For all of my friends that met Sydney as like a 14-year-old when she first started coming out here to visit us, to now seeing her as a mother is
Jake,
jarring.
they understand. Jake and Jenny, they understand with their 2-year-old son Jackson. It's like, yeah, we get it. But Sydney's like, no.
So that was.
But she is getting christened today.
Yes, there we go.
Yes.
Finding
Alex.
Christ-saving light
Alex.
today. We're excited to do that. I'm not bitter. I'm not a godparent at all. Someone drops the baby, not my fault.
Wow, that's 2 losses for you.
Yeah, no,
You're
it's
not a godparent, and I kicked your butt.
You know what? It was a tough weekend on that front for me. Could be worse, though. I could be the Dan Levitard show crew and the Florida Panthers fans in here. Good God almighty. Claudia, we all sat here last week, and when we had a chance to cash it or trash it, we all put the vibes out into the universe for Game 7. And my, oh my, I did not anticipate them actually delivering to this extent.
My favorite thing on Twitter over the weekend was your tweet saying, did anybody try to unplug and replug the Panthers? Because that's the only question remaining. Like, what happened to this Panthers team? It looked like it was going to be a copy and paste of the NBA Finals, a quick one. Here we are, Game 7. Oilers got the win in Game 5, then another win on Friday. A big win, too. A 5-3 Game 5 win, then a 5-1 on Friday. So the script has completely flipped. 18th Game 7 in Stanley Cup final history. Home teams in that, guys, 12-5. The Panthers are the slight favorite here at -115. It's a pick 'em at some other shops. The only time a team came back from a 3-0 deficit to win a championship period was 1942 Stanley Cup Finals. The Leafs beat the Red Wings, but that's any team in Major League Baseball, NBA, or NHL history. So it's not the cash it or trash it segment, but I don't know what to say about this Oilers team other than I'm done trashing them. I think they could make history, like I said, in any of those 3 major leagues and win this thing, GoJo.
I agree. I think when you look at momentum is something that always gets disputed in sports, right? This idea of, is it real at all? How is it created? And I tend to agree. Like, momentum is a thing that tends to affect immature teams, young teams. I think about it a lot less at the professional level, but certainly at a stage like this or for a team like the Florida Panthers. I just think it's one of those things, though, Dad, where the one part that can be affected by mentality is what's happening in the goal right now.
Yeah.
And now there's some people, I think, that believe Sergei Bobrovsky's dealing with some sort of injury and got hurt earlier
Which
in
we'll find out
series.
2 weeks after the series is over.
Like everyone else when they all line up and begin their various surgeries after the NHL season. But something like that, where it was such the story of this team, along with the rest of the defense, the way that they had just smothered teams. Once you cracked a little bit of that confidence, one, for the goaltender himself, to where now he's not seeing everything as clean, but also for that opposing offense, the Oilers, led by Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and the rest of these great players that had been stymied for the early portion of the season, once they got their confidence back, it seems to have not wavered for a second since, and that's why I think they're going to win this thing.
After they were down 3-0, the next 3 games they won, they outscored Florida 18-5. 18-5. I mean, that it's just they did get it going. And the Panthers on the other side in that time, 1 of 19 on power plays. Plus, they gave up 2 shorthanded goals within that as well.
I was going to say, special teams really has turned the tide on this series altogether.
So, we sit there. In football, it's different because it's one game. So you sit there and talk about pressure. Who's the pressure on? Well, you know what? It's one game. Anybody shouldn't feel that there's pressure of a championship game, but it's one game. So for this one, it's like, is there extra pressure? We always kind of joke about that in a championship series. No, you're at the highest level. Right. You're in the highest game. There shouldn't be pressure. You can't tell me there's not pressure on Florida. You are about to do.
There's pressure on both of these teams. No. It's game 7.
I agree with that, but from a player standpoint, from the outside looking in, it's almost like people are going to say, well, Edmonton's been playing with house money for how long right now? This is the 4th game where the Cup's going to be in the building. Something you don't see, right? And Florida has just gacked it away 3 times, and now maybe a 4th time. So from the mental standpoint, Mike, it's hard for me not to believe there isn't a little bit in the back of the mind of Florida, a little bit of added pressure of, we might be only the 2nd team ever in the history of series major sports to blow this one. And I know each game is separate. I get that. But when you've lost 3 in a row, it's hard to not have that in your mind.
Well, and I think the mental part of athletics is always really interesting. Like, I can so clearly remember being a bad team my first few years here at Notre Dame, and we'd get in the fourth quarter of games and we'd lose them all the time. And then it was a pervasive feeling around sidelines when you get to the fourth quarter in future games where something bad would happen, and instead of, all right, whose turn to make a play is it? It would be, oh, here we go again.
Exactly.
And that feeling is a really difficult cloak to get off you on the sideline until you see the ball go through the basket a few times. And Florida had done that coming off of the Cup loss last year. They had done that and seen that through the early portion of this series. Now, if you're going into this game, you're having to work hard mentally to go back and find clean reps in your mind from this series where you've been successful. And Claudia, I think that clouding of the picture combined with the way both of these teams have gotten to this point makes it really dicey for them.
Well, speaking of the mentality side of this, Sergei Bobrovsky wasn't at practice on Sunday, which is a bit questionable, and I'm sure he's the one feeling this impact the most after doing so well to start this series, feeling like it was in the bag. All he had to do was continue playing the way he had, and again, the script flipped, and it's not like the Oilers were peppering them with shots over these last 2 games. It was 23 shots on net and 19 in this last game. The point was they just started generating those quality shots, and Sergei Bobrovsky just seemed really lost. So I think that's the other big storyline here heading into it. Not sure why he wasn't at practice on Sunday. Maybe he is a bit injured. They just wanted to give him some time. But whether or not he's healthy coming into this game, his mind cannot be in a good place.
No. And so that's a huge part going into tonight, because what's weighing on the Panthers players is, are we going to be on the receiving end now? And the story of one of the worst blowouts in pro sports, one of the worst I'm struggling to find the right word for it right now. That's the cliche one we always use, but this is one of the worst instances of sports of blowing a lead of this caliber. Because, Dad, I'd look at the other ones. I'd ask you, is this going to be the worst collapse in the history of pro sports that we've seen, at least recently?
Yes.
The other ones that I would look at, and I want to offer you these, because in my mind, this is a 3-horse race now in this, between the 2004 ALCS, Boston Red Sox and New York Yankees. It wasn't a championship series in the fact that it was for the World Series, but insane rivalry. I saw Evan Cohen talking about this morning on Unsportsman. Like, it's a great call given the history of those two teams, the stage, the Red Sox personal history up until that point, and kind of how it changed things there. The Cavaliers 3-1 lead against the Golden State Warriors. Golden State blows that lead. LeBron James comes back. The prodigal son leads the Cavaliers to their first championship there. It's not 3-0, but damn it, it's close. And now you've got this where certainly for Edmonton personally, there's championship on the line. There's also the Canadian aspect of this in the NHL and the fact that we'll have just never seen this on this stage. So how would you order those three?
The storylines for the other two make it even more, right? It's LeBron James trying to win a first championship for the city of Cleveland. Basketball. It's the Red Sox and the Yankees. I mean, it's the rivalry there. So there's a bigger storyline in those two series. But this is for the title. This is for it all. So to me, this is still the biggest, even though this isn't a known rivalry or anything like that. This is still something that in those sports we talked about, in baseball, in hockey, and in basketball, this happened once for a championship. It happened a couple other times in hockey, but it wasn't for the Stanley Cup, wasn't championship round. So that, to me, I think puts everything else in perspective. While the bigger storylines were those other two you said because of the teams or the people involved, this still, to me, is the biggest thing because it's about raising one of the greatest trophies we have in sports over your head, coming back from the dead, down 3-0 and winning it all. So I would still choose this as number one.
I might still order the Red Sox-Yankees one in there just because of the rivalry. And
that would be second to me.
Of what's happened since. But I do think this eclipses what happened with Golden State, purely because when you go back to that series, you can at least point to one fracture point where it's, hey, Draymond Green got suspended.
Exactly.
And that series all of a sudden turned on its head. You had a major player taken off. And while, again, if we find out Bobrovsky was injured, and that really has been something that's impacted it, obviously we'll point back, but he's still been on the ice.
That's exactly
And it's the same thing. We've heard all these guys, athletes in different sports, wax poetic about.
That's what Luka, when he was injured, right? You're on the court. Doesn't matter how bad you're hurt. If you're on the court, you're on the ice, you're on the field, play.
Because on the other side, it is 30-plus year Canadian Stanley Cup drought. It's also kind of like LeBron James coming home while he had already won in Miami. winning in Cleveland meant more for Connor McDavid, guy who's been consensus best player in the sport for everybody but Greg Cody, now all of a sudden has a chance to go. And in what felt like, again, because of some contractual situations with this team, maybe their last best chance with him in an Oilers uniform to go out and get this done. And so now if he were able to cap this off with a postseason where he's breaking records or tying records or approaching records that all have the name Gretzky involved, that reminds you of the caliber of player this guy is, this is really second to none in terms of what we've seen in championship events in sports in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, it has been an incredible turnaround. And quickly what I said about if you're on the ice or quarter field and you're hurt, play, and you just play. They are playing. They are doing that. So, but it's not, I'm not going to use that as an excuse for them because they understand that they want to be out there and they want to be playing. So, well, I would imagine, Claudia, it's Connor McDavid real quick. Is he the favorite for Conn Smythe now?
Oh, yeah. It's
got to be, right?
Just slightly. Minus 2,500. That's all. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
2,000. So regardless, they say whether they win or not, it's his award.
Not the time to put the money on him.
No, we are past that dip you were supposed to buy a while back.
The dip is long gone.
Yeah. The dip is long. There is a lot of dip on that Florida Panthers chip, though, and we're going to see if they can pull this back together or if the Dan Le Batard show as we know it might break off and finally walk collectively into the ocean after what's gone on with this saga. Coming up next, though, let's take a look at another big event from over the weekend. Scottie Scheffler winning again. I, for one, am surprised. But the final few holes with a lot of drama next. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato. We still have plenty of time to talk Stanley Cup action heading into Game 7 tonight. But, Dad, Over the weekend, we had a little bit close to home for us. We were busy golfing out here, but the Travelers Championship in Connecticut was going off. And I know much to your joy and delight, we saw some very low scores this weekend carving up that course here. This has been a passion project for you over the years, watching Scotty Scheffler, who wins in an exciting fashion in a one-hole playoff with Tom Kim at the end of this, to finish the round and win at minus 22 for the tournament. How'd you like that, buddy?
So, I mean, we're going to get to our all-weekend team later, and it's going to involve this because I still have to give credit where credit is due. But this is ridiculous. I mean, this 22 under. But the one thing you said, it was competitive,
yes,
and it went to playoff holes. So that part of it, I dig when there's that competition. But to see players, what did we have at the U.S. Open? Was it 6 or 8 players under par? I don't even want to count them all right now.
They're all under par.
I mean,
I think all but 5 golfers were over par.
There were one withdrew, and the other 4, there was even +1, and +5. Everybody else was under par. I mean, what is this, a putt-putt course? I mean, are we serious? I mean, this is on the pro tour that guys are just destroying this course. It's, in my opinion, it's almost embarrassing to have pros playing on a course like that and shoot that low. It's ridiculous. Though, again, I'm going to give out an all-weekend team guy for something that he did that not many people do a little later, but still, that's crazy. I mean, because I love
this has bothered you for a long time here. Now, I am a little bit more of a Connecticut native son than you since I got there so young in life, so I am not going to go out here and slander one of the few good things that we have.
I don't care if it's Connecticut. I don't care if it's California. I don't care where it is. I mean, pros playing on this course, and only 3 or 4 were over par. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Listen, they had a great weekend. Everybody had a lot of fun. I don't know why you're trying to focus on all this negativity. Yes, they're very good, and they carved it up. This isn't supposed to be one of the majors in terms of how hard they torque up the difficulty.
But they're paying it now. They're making it a signature event, and they are handing out the money for this one to go, hit lollipops and be 10 under.
Scotty Scheffler, should note, has won 5 of the 8 signature events so far this year. Scotty's season has now, Scotty Scheffler, who won at the Travelers, and we will get to the fashion in which he did.
Yeah.
But, Dad, your favorite stat here, the money. 2024 season, Scotty Scheffler is now at $27.69 million and still has the Open Championship coming up, the Comcast Business Top 10, FedEx St. Jude, BMW Championship, the FedEx Cup payout, and then that Player Impact Program where you get credit for all of the different ways that you're mentioned in the media. That was something that the PGA put in place to try and incentivize players to get in front of cameras more, be engaged online. And Scotty Scheffler, who had to have some flashbacks on 18.
Oh my God.
When the protesters hit here at the Travelers Championship. If anyone missed it, during this final round when Tom Kim and Scotty Scheffler are going back and forth trying to decide who's going to win this thing, a group of protesters broke onto the 18th green. They were climate change protesters there. There was a little flare or smoke bomb that went off out there. And the police had to come out and apprehend them. Scotty Scheffler had to be having flashbacks in that moment, right?
I mean,
terrifying.
Without question. See the cops running out there, trying to think in his head. Wait, did I do something?
Right, exactly. Whose pants are the pants okay? Are everyone's $80 pants okay out here?
So the protesters, were taken off, but with the smoke bomb or whatever, it discolored some of the green there right by the hole. They tried to clean it up. They finished the 18th on that one. It was a tie, and then what they did is they recut the 18th hole. They recut the hole, so it was a different spot because they couldn't get all the marks up. And he went to the sudden death, and Scheffler hit a monster second shot. Kim put it in.
Felt terrible for Kim. Just completely imploded.
Put it in the sand, but he still, if he had the up and down in the sand, he could have. He could have forced another hole, but he went even past Scotty's coming out of the sand. Did not have because it was buried. It was a fried egg in there.
He'd had a great putt to force the playoff after everything that happened, because that was while they were on the green.
Yes.
When these protesters came out, and Tom Kim said it actually kind of calmed him down a little bit. And so he drained that putt and was able to get to the playoff. But once he got there, the weight of playing Scotty Scheffler in another chance for him to add a win to this season, which seems, pun fully intended, baby, par for the course.
There you go.
He went out there and gets it done. And so now we get this freight train roll. Although, Dad, does it feel different to you at all? Because I thought about this leading into this weekend with what we saw at the U.S. Open and Bryson DeChambeau going out here and the way that live golfers have impacted the major championships. It does make you wonder, all right, Scottie Scheffler's a great golfer, but
doesn't have the best players in the world.
I was going to say, it's all of a sudden now, it's like, all right, he's beating all these guys, but so many of the big-time names now, combined with the fact that Rory obviously has taken the time off before the Open Championship, which we'll get to, it just made you go, all right, maybe we're not getting as fully throated a version of this as we should or deserve.
And not his fault, playing with who's out there, right? It's just the circumstances right now, but I'm sure there are obviously others who are way more into golf than us, and we're way into golf, that are thinking the same thing. He's not playing against the best competition, but this is what it is right now, and he's destroying everybody, and he's done it too even when the best competition, even though in the Open, he did not play all that well. I think the best stat of all the money is, remember, these guys give 10% to their caddies of their winnings. So again, he's won over $27 million this year in earnings on the course. That means his caddy, Ted Scott, 10% of that, $2.7 million. That $2.7 million would put him on the top 50 of the PGA money right now. Of the players, not the caddies, the players. He would be top 50 amongst the players making $2.7 million. And Scottie Scheffler is going to keep winning, as you mentioned, what he has coming up. And he should become the tour's fourth $100 million earner by summer's end. So, and you know what they all need to do for that one, or he did? Go thank Tiger Woods. Because Tiger Woods was the reason these purses started to get monstrous, and then Liv added to it as well, right? So for Tiger, it had been years of his dominance and excellence and notoriety to the game that helped increase the purses, and then Liv just shot it up another percentage as well.
Yeah, it's no denying that there was a clear reaction to this, and now it's led to this moment where we're still waiting to see what hangs in the balance of that, but we get to enjoy everyone coming together for these major championships. So Claudia, looking ahead now, the Open Championship coming up a few weeks away here. Scottie versus the field. Are we there again with the odds on this?
Can you guys guess who's the favorite? No? Any other name? No, it's Scottie. Yeah, plus 450. He's the favorite. Rory McIlroy, who you just mentioned, is second at 7-1. And then DeChambeau at 12-1 is third. So again, he is a pretty sizable favorite in golf standards. That leads us to Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned to hear everything DraftKings has to offer throughout the show. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. Scottie Scheffler, to me, is sort of like the Oilers at this point. I don't really want to bet against him, even if he is the favorite. So, Senior, are you cashing or trashing another Scottie Scheffler win at plus 450?
Well, I mean, what I would do, it's if I want a little more, gain for my money. Why is DeChambeau so A, third, and B, 12-1 as opposed to 4-1? I thought he would be closer. In fact, I thought he would be ahead of Rory, quite honestly. I thought he would be second. So, in all honesty, I lean toward Bryson because I'm going to get a better payout there, and he's playing some great golf.
I would probably lean Scottie until further notice if I'm betting individually. If we're doing the Scottie versus the field, which we felt like early in the year might be running away with it, you look at the rest of that field. Xander Schauffele's got a major under his belt now. Ludwig Åberg has been in the contention for a lot of these. Colin Morikawa is playing great golf. John Rahm maybe getting back in the mix now that his toe is feeling better. All of these things, the field is so strong going into this. You have to side with that portion of things because it's, I don't want to say level set some. Scottie just won again and managed to do it. I am stunned that Rory McIlroy is this high on the board, given the fact that the guy said, I got to take a mental health break for a couple weeks in the lead up to this because I crumbled in a way that's difficult. We talked about this relative to the team sport with the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final. Trying to do that, at least you got a team. You got other guys to rely on in all this. Rory McIlroy had that kind of collapse on his own, and it's in a storied history and a drought of his own in major championships. I don't know how you work through that in the short amount of time here and expect it to be markedly different.
So against better judgment, I'm going to trash Scottie Scheffler on this one, and I'm going to actually cash Bryson on this one, which really seems to be a dumb move on my part. But I'm still feeling good about myself because, I beat you yesterday in our tournament.
There we go. It's always, when in doubt, it's going to go back to that. I will give you no logic. I will give you no actual golf justification. Purely, I won and you lost. Coming up next, let's talk about more winners. We sent one of our intrepid reporters out to the Celtics championship parade next.
Yes, indeed. It is a mic'd up Monday here on GoJo and Golic. And we have the Celtics parade ahead of them hanging that 18th banner. They came right by the DraftKings studio on Friday. We have a little time lapse for you. It was quiet in the morning, but that makes sense because we wake up early here for the show. But over time, yeah, I think it got crowded. Mayor Michelle Wu said well over 1 million people were in attendance. Our own Emerson Lazia joined the festivities.
All right, boys, who are we most excited to see floating around on the duck boats today?
Hayden Pritchard.
Oh.
Hayden Pritchard. Pingus.
Most excited to see today float around on duck boats, ladies? Banner 18, world champions once again.
Number one. Celtics are number one. Kyrie sucks. Kyrie sucks! Kyrie sucks!
Yo. Derek White. What's up?
Marcus Smart, please come back. I love you, Marcus Smart.
Let's just pour one out here for Marcus Smart. Listen, that's what I'm talking about.
Let's give it a kiss.
Don't mind if I do. It's a little wet. Did you call in sick to work today?
Hell yeah, you know the vibe.
Hats up. Finish the sentence for me. Celtics are the Bulls! Hell yeah, brother.
I gotta say, I'm glad Emerson brought up the Marcus Smart of it all. I'm glad people are thinking about that man and what I have to imagine is an incredibly trying time.
I would agree, but Porzingis came for that one.
Oh no,
right?
I'm saying it worked out for them. I'm just saying, feeling for Marcus Smart, the person, this guy who seemed to love the Boston Celtics, was a huge part of his presence. We remember talking to Charlotte Wilder on the show. Her and so many people distraught that he was leaving because he's such a heart and soul part of this team. To now have to watch all of this, would not be surprised if he came back and balled out next year in response, because that's got to be a hell of a motivator. Watching all the guys that you bled with go and enjoy that. Claudia, when we left you on Friday, we were sending you out hopefully to go enjoy some of the festivities. What was it like around town for you, hopefully not kissing sweaty trophies like Emerson?
No, definitely not. I got in there and I lasted 2 minutes and then I left because there was way too many people. It was hot and sweaty. And honestly, it seemed like a fire hazard because you couldn't move anywhere. But everybody was very happy. Good vibes all around. So successful day for sure. But a lot of people.
I like when we talk about a late arriving crowd because it was empty when we were showing, because everybody was too mad and waiting in line for the ice, for Dunkin' Donuts to get the ice for the iced coffee that they seemed to run out of.
Dunkin' Coffee Gate was a really tough start to this. But
what a great time for them. I mean, I'm glad I got the sign that says, talking about how many parades some kid has been to.
He's back now. He's like 22 years old. He was back out there. I saw the pictures of him on social media.
Did he have another sign or no?
Oh, God. I mean, if you're the sign kid, you got to stay being the sign kid.
You got to jump in there. I get it, but my gosh, they have had a number of parades. They should have this thing down pat.
By the way, Derek White, I saw.
Got his tooth fixed.
Got his new tooth out of the parade there. Mm-hmm. Our prediction, and we saw those guys, unsurprisingly, Peyton Pritchard, proud favorite there. I didn't get to see much of the footage if he looked up and ended up being the drunkest guy at the parade or not. He was our prediction going into last week. I don't know if anyone else maybe usurped that crown here. Claudia, do we have any reports, boots on the ground, of anyone else that might have been in contention that we saw out on the parade route?
Derek White and Peyton Pritchard were definitely up there after, but I will say Sam Hauser was still partying the whole entire weekend. So the day of, Derek White, for sure. Pritchard was up there, but I was right, actually. D. White was, he was on one, as he should have been.
The video of Sam Hauser looking like he's just horking up. The old boot and rally.
Did he puke and rally?
It looked like, looking at that, looked like he was up there with his arm up. Then all of a sudden he hesitated for a moment.
It looked like he puked in the cooler.
And then he put his head down. Yeah. And it did. It looked like he puked in the cooler that had probably drinks and ice in there.
Dog.
And then stood back up and threw his arm right. Why is booting and rally? There's nothing wrong with that.
It better have been the puking cooler, though. Like, they better have had that there with the understanding that we might eventually puke. Because if you puke in the cooler with all the drinks in there that everybody else is going to use, then what are we doing?
Well, the thing is, all the drinks in there, it's not like they're open. If there's beers
You're
in there,
not going and grabbing a pukey beer.
Oh, I absolutely
There's no, I know you. There's no way you're grabbing a pukey beer. You're doing this in front of company right now.
No, I'm not, because if I'm up on there, while I might not be puking and rallying, I'm hammered. So I'm not thinking a whole lot about
You are
going in there.
not reaching into the vomit cooler.
It depends on how much vomit's in there. Is it actually on the can or the bottle, or is it in the other part of the cooler? So I'm not going to get any of that. I'm sure the ice is melting some, so it's water. You can rinse it off. I mean, there's plenty you can do in that altered state, where if you're completely stone sober, you're not going to do it. But if you're, got it going a little bit, you may not think twice about it.
Boy, I am really worried about you here, Dad. You've got money. They've got money. You guys can all afford another cooler. That's not even a big cooler.
No, it's not.
You got to.
It's not.
This is like the age-old question: was it 127 hours with the guy to chop off his arm stuck in those rocks?
Yeah.
You got to saw off this cooler for the greater good of the body and go on without it.
It's a tough call that he did that. I mean, it would have been better for the video if he just leaned over the railing and booted. That'd have been a great video.
That would have been great for the video, bad for the side of the duck boat and the fans.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he threw up a lot though. So and maybe he didn't. It looked like he did. I mean, you're not bending over and putting your face in a cooler for. It's not like he all of a sudden was looking for a beer in there.
Minor setback for a major comeback. Yeah. So congratulations to the Boston Celtics. Good job by Emerson and everybody else. We're glad that everyone enjoyed themselves safely and had a good time. But speaking of comebacks, how about the W this weekend here? The beauty of right now, we're getting ready for league expansion, but having the smaller amount of teams means we get a lot more looks at some of these matchups. And we got Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese round 3, and it has lived up to the billing at every turn so far, Claudia. I mean, this is another one now. The first win for the Chicago Sky in the 3 times they've played this series, the first time they've hosted. But Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese both showing out and having big nights.
Massive night for Angel Reese. Caitlin Clark too, but the game overall, a big comeback for Reese and friends. 88-87 was the final. But listen to these stats for these 2 young rookies. Career high 25 points and 16 rebounds for Angel Reese. Caitlin Clark 17 points, 13 assists. Here's what Reese had to say about the big night.
I'm a dog. You can't teach that. I'm going to go out and do whatever it takes to win every single night. My teammates rely on my energy. So being able to continue the energy, even if we're down, even if we're up, that's what I do.
She had a double-double for her 8th consecutive game, which, yes, is a rookie record, and she's a dog, senior.
She is a dog. And listen, there have been obviously the controversy on the court, and then sometimes what she says off the court as to her play and her, the way I'm the dog. Some people don't like that, but you know what? So what? I mean, and listen, I think some of the things she said, she plays the villain role, and maybe, I know if you said maybe the media forces that, but she still has a mic in front of her and she does that. But you can separate, they're not mutually exclusive. You can say that, but on the court, she is a dog. On the court, what she is doing, scoring, and I love the rebounding. To me, the scoring is one thing, but the rebounding is another, because that, as we say, is there's X's and O's, and then there's just want to, positioning, tenacity, to her point, having the dog in you, which she does. She is fun to watch in the paint on the defensive side.
Coolest stat so far, because while we've talked about the rest of this rookie class, obviously the W has bigger storylines than this series because these teams are both still near the bottom of the pack. But a cool view into what this is it's a rivalry that goes back to college, and it's not going to go away the way people perceive it. And you look at what they've done in the context of this matchup, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Caitlin Clark is the first player in WNBA history to have 50 points and 25 assists in their first 3 games against a single opponent. Angel Reese is the 3rd player in WNBA history with 40 points and 40 boards in their first 3 games against a single opponent. So they both show up and show out. It was sold out at Wintrust Arena. The ticket price average was like $350. This matchup has been box office in the early going, and both of these players have found their footing. Like, I think Rookie of the Year in the W is going to be a fascinating battle between both of these women.
Completely agree. Angel Reese is playing so well right now. And the cool thing for me is going to be what happened with this win is it put Chicago in the 8th spot, Indiana in the 9th spot, and 8 make the playoffs, is when these 2 teams with these 2 players get better and they're playing more near the top.
As for right now, though, if you have that as a battle to make the playoffs between these 2 incredible rookies right now, much like we've seen in the NBA with the play-in tournament there, everybody wins when you've got that kind of eyes on some of the biggest stars in the sport. Coming up next, we'll hit the biggest stars from the rest of the weekend with our all-weekend team. And spoiler alert, we're heading to London.
Oh, God.
All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We know a lot goes on over the weekends in sports, and it's hard to always get to it. Thankfully, we have developed the system to get you just that. The all-weekend team, our best performers from all across the world of sports. This weekend here, we go honorable mention, second team, and first team performers from the all-weekend squad here. Dad, let's start off with honorable mention on the back end of this thing here. We haven't talked about F1 in a little while.
No, we
did
have
last
not.
time we had Jessica Smetana on here, but Lewis Hamilton, podium for the first time this year at the Spanish Grand Prix this last weekend here. He goes just behind Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. But, Dad, the interesting part of this is him making that podium, some of the back and forth between them and Ferrari, given the fact that, and this is one of the juicy parts about Formula One, you have all these decisions made about where these guys will drive the following year made before the season ends. So Lewis Hamilton getting ready to leave Mercedes, where he has been since he was 13 years old, to go drive for a Ferrari team that he now beat going into this weekend. And he's doing media having to remind people like, hey, remember, they won in Monaco a couple of weeks ago. And it creates such an interesting tension for the most storied driver in the modern history of the sport.
It is wild when you have these guys driving for a team knowing they're going to be somewhere else the next year, and how that lame duck year and how they're going to act throughout that year in a sport where they're all making tens of millions of dollars anyway.
It's all gravy. The sponsorships across Formula One are always my favorite, because in football it's like beer and chips and stuff like that, and over there it's watches and high-end hotel change. It's just a beautiful image of the sport.
Oh, by the way, Verstappen won again. I think it's his 61st win with Red Bull.
I'm shocked. I can't believe this.
A stunner. All right, my honorable mention, Paul Skeens. What he's doing, the pitcher, the rookie pitcher for Pittsburgh, came out of the gate throwing hard. You thought, okay, that's going to cool off. He's 4-0, has a few no decisions in there, but he's 4-0. Just in his game against Tampa Bay yesterday, 7 innings, gave up 6 hits, 1 run. The only run was a home run, I think, to the first guy he faced. 8 strikeouts. But his last pitch was just under 102 miles an hour in the 7th inning. His 98th pitch was just under 102 miles an hour. He now has 70 pitches this year over 100 miles an hour. The next closest is 36.
It's crazy.
Over 100 miles. He just keeps throwing gas. It's incredible.
We need to protect this young cannon of an arm on this dude here. It's exciting. His ERA is just a little bit over 2 right now. He's been balling. And to see a prospect like this that we knew and talked about coming off the College World Series last year, was expected to come in right away and make this impact, but you never know, has come in so far and been dominant. And shout out to him, smart girlfriend guy, credited Livy Dunn and said she's helped him navigate a lot of this attention, because she has been one of the most high-profile athletes in the sport, the LSU gymnastics star, and one of the biggest NIL winners through the first couple of years.
Him saying that could be better than what he's actually doing on the field is to give her props.
Exactly. Good smart move. Man, getting through it the way he can. Let's go second team here, Dad. This one's a pretty cool full circle moment, because I remember when we were covering Sha'Carri Richardson back in 2021 in the pandemic abbreviated Olympic time trials. She makes it in the 100 meters. And then we have the positive drug test for marijuana, the ensuing discourse around that of course we all screwed up, because we have no idea how to discuss black female athletes in public 9 out of 10 times. And so everybody goes way too far and just completely leaves this woman for naught in the sport. Sha'Carri Richardson goes out yesterday and finally does qualify and makes the 100-meter final, wins the gold medal in qualifications, runs one of the 3 fastest 100-meter times in the world since last year, and now gets to head to Paris to finally represent Team USA in the Olympics.
I mean, you're right. That whole controversy was
it was just
crazy.
Ridiculous.
Absolutely,
and we turn everything into a culture, or it was so overdone in real time there. And so now to see her on the back end, having persevered through all of that, these people trying to slander her name, slander her ability, and now see her getting to live out her moment coming up in Paris as one of the fastest women in the world is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Again, the trials going on now for track and field. We have the gymnastics trial still to come up. Swimming just ended yesterday. I just love this stuff. All right, my second team is going to be Asia Wilson. Finally getting a shoe deal, right? Finally getting a shoe deal.
Oh, and we got the
with Nike. There are other Brianna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, Caitlin Clark, and now Asia Wilson is getting her own shoe. I love the shirt she was wearing, a sweatshirt with the words, of course, I have a shoe.com. So, I mean,
she unveiled the logo this weekend.
The logo
is what
of
she
it,
did for the
unveiled
shoe.
the logo for the shoe. Yeah. So she's got a logo now, which is very cool. I mean, she is the best player in the WNBA. And for her not to be finally getting that love from the shoe and the logo, it's about time. It's about time. So congrats to her for getting that. And and she's having, by the way, another dominant year.
Yeah, exactly. While the Aces are looking to get back on track, and they got Chelsea Gray back. She played her first minutes of the season recently, and so they're hoping that rights the ship as they head and send a bunch of their great players off to Paris for the Olympic break. That coming back on the other side of that, this Aces team can return more to the form that has them being the back-to-back champions. But A'ja Wilson has been blue chip stock the entire. Deal, yeah. It's like every time you just see someone else's stats compared to anything A'ja Wilson's done, and I believe Angel Reese this weekend, her rebounding prowess was in the range of something not done since A'ja Wilson was a rookie in this league. Let you know you're on the right path.
So again, her with the logo of the shoe deal. Got the logo now. What's cooler, having your own shoe or having your own logo?
Well, having a good logo goes a long way, I think, in helping you sell the shoe and sell the surrounding merch. So strong logo. Feels like it's a good product. I'm excited to see the shoe. Excited to see everything around this one. More excited to get you guys to the first team all weekend pick here, though. And Dad, do you want to give yours out here first? Do you want to clear out some runway here? Do you want me to go? Because I'm gonna. I know.
I'll do it quickly so you have some time. Okay. I'm gonna go as I ripped on the Travelers for how easy the course is, where everybody but 4 players
leave Connecticut alone.
We're under par. It has nothing to do with Connecticut. I don't care where the course is.
We deserve this.
I don't care where the course is. It's an easy course, but luckily there was some. A competition down the line. There was a playoff, so that was cool. I get that. But I'm going to go back to it and say, even though it plays as an easy course, only 13 times has this been done, shooting a 59 in a round. Cam Young shot that on Saturday.
Yes, he did.
He shot a 59. So while it seems somewhat hypocritical to talk bad about a tournament because of the course and then good about someone when they got a 59, again, don't care. 59 is wow. I mean, absolutely amazing. Again, he did it on Saturday. So, add him now as I believe the 13th player to shoot a 59. That is cool. And I don't care no matter where you're. It's just like
kind of talking out both sides of your mouth. I'm not gonna lie.
I am, but you know what? I want to give Cam Young a little bit of love, so I am.
There you go. Perfect. I'll save you from yourself on this one. Get to first team all weekend. Man, oh man, the Kelces had themselves a weekend. Specifically, our buddy Travis Kelce here. I think we can call him friend of the program after his tweet interaction there. The Kelce family was in London. So Travis Kelce, as well as his brother Jason and Jason's wife Kylie, all in London at the Wembley Stadium shows of the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. And on night 3 is when we supernova. There were already images of Jason Kelce out there with the friendship bracelets, yucking it up with all the Swifties, having his moment as he's beloved by that fan base as well. But night 3, after the hard launch, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, and the Royals in an Instagram post that was finally on her page. We hadn't seen that yet with Travis interacting. Makes waves already. But then night 3, at the beginning of one of the last parts of her show that was added, the new album, The Tortured Poets Department, has its own new set. And at one point, they bring Taylor Swift out in this box. They're getting ready for a song called I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. And they're trying to kind of get her ready and going. And all of a sudden, one of the other dancers on stage looked a little bit bigger, looked a little bit taller, looked kind of familiar. Travis Kelce, tuxedo clad, goes out onto the stage to help perform the skit to lead into I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. And I got to say, Dad, the acting chops were A1 in here. He went all the way. You don't want half measures when it comes to this kind of performance art in the middle of the set. I thought he nailed it.
I mean, the video of this, of one of the fans who was filming this, and the amount of screaming is, that's why I don't know.
That was just me next to you in the house.
I mean,
that was me and Sydney.
It is
yelling.
And that's what I remember about Sydney and your buddy Kevin Egan and your mother going to one of her concerts at Mohegan Sun, and when I went for a little bit, is the screaming. The amount of screaming. But I will say, Travis has a great personality.
Awesome.
Travis is basically up for anything, just about, right? I mean, he is not afraid to put himself out there at all, never really has been. And I thought, again, I like Taylor Swift. I like her music. I'm not into it like you are. But watching that and watching what he did involved in that actually was very cool because he bought into it all and really sold it.
Down for whatever. Yeah. Him and Jason looked like they were having a blast out there.
Jason popped the top. Jason popped the top.
I didn't see the shirt come off. I would have bet if we were cashing or trashing before the weekend, does Jason Kelce's shirt stay on at Wembley?
You think
I would have cashed
Kylie
it.
Maybe put her foot down on that one?
Probably decided this wasn't the venue for that. Either way, an incredible end to an incredible weekend in sports. All right, welcome back. Hour number 2 of GoJo and Golic here. Coming up in about a half hour, going to talk to Greg Sankey.
Yeah.
SEC commissioner, going to stop by at a time where certainly the SEC, the story of the College World Series on the men's
Without
side.
question.
You've got the future SEC members that were the dominant force in the Women's College World Series in softball. And, oh, by the way, we're going into a college football season full of massive change and a bunch of rulings in the sport.
Where Oklahoma and Texas have jumped into the SEC.
Yes,
as well. So
they're jumping in here. House versus the NCAA threatens to change the entire structure of the sport. You know, ho-hum stuff for the guy that a decade into his position at the helm of the SEC is the unquestioned most powerful and most tenured voice in sports at that level.
And I think the question everybody wants the answer to, I'm going to ask it. I am going to ask it.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
All right. The question that you all want the answer,
Yeah.
you know what it is. Don't act like you don't know what it is. You know exactly what you want. That's going to be the question that Dad asked Greg Sankey coming up in about a half hour here. So we're excited to check that out with him. But Dad, in the meantime, before we get to all of that, NBA free agency has been the story of the last week or so since the end of the NBA Finals here. We had the coaching moves that have rocked it. JJ Redick going to the Los Angeles Lakers. Still waiting to hear what's going to happen now with the Detroit Pistons, with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but also with some of the premier NBA names out there. Now, we know some of these players are getting a little older and things are changing, but the dynasties of the sport that we have known for so long are starting to change shape. And we can get to the Philadelphia 76ers and some others. But looking at, I think, one of the more interesting teams this offseason that kind of came into focus this weekend, the Golden State Warriors' next step as a franchise and how they decide to orchestrate this is going to go a long way in, I think, deciding what the remaining portion of Steph Curry's career looks like. Because at this point, if you're Golden State, that is your priority. Steph Curry is still someone playing at or near the height of his powers. Maybe not as potent as before for any number of reasons, but he's the commodity you've got to try and measure. And as we sit here now and look at the way that this team has approached the impending free agency of Klay Thompson, by not approaching him at all, necessarily, I think tells you a lot about what Golden State is willing to do to finally potentially break up the triplets that have been the name brand of this franchise during its greatest years.
No negotiations right now, and the window is wide open to negotiate with your own players, and there has been nothing going on with Klay Thompson. But we all thought he wasn't going to be back, right? I mean, it seems weird because he's been there so long and what they've accomplished, but as they say, all good things come to an end. So I don't think he's going to be there anymore. And then it is the interesting part with Steph Curry. Is it going to be like a Kobe Bryant situation where you're going to do all you can, keep him there? He's with Golden State, stay with Golden State. Like Kobe won a bunch of championships. Steph won a bunch of championships. Kobe goes down as one of the greatest of all time. Steph's going to go down as one of the greatest of all time. But they want to keep him on that team and make sure his entire career is with Golden State.
And I think we did a little bit of that. I mean, who among us did not succumb to the siren song of watching LeBron James and Steph Curry high five and smile at each other during the NBA All-Star break and thinking about what might be as that point, Steph Curry hadn't signed the extension he's on now with Golden State. That looks like it's going to keep him there for the remainder of his career. He seems like he's going to be a lifer at Golden State. But yeah, Dad, this does seem inevitable. We're 10 days now away from free agency, and it sounds like talks are frozen with Klay Thompson. And it's the right move. I think given where he's at as a player at this point, that's the right move. And for Steph Curry now, I do think it's a little bit less – I don't know. I guess I'd say it can be a little bit less than the Kobe situation at the end, where the team was just non-competitive, and it was clear that this was a thank you for services rendered kind of deal. I think Steph Curry is still providing you that said same value, but the Golden State Warriors for so long were so adept at signing, finding, and bringing young talent in there that was going to be able to fit into that system around its three superstars. Because this also begs the question now, Dad, if you're going to let Klay Thompson walk, which I believe they're going to do, then what do you do with Draymond Green at this point as well, who last year we saw the frustration that he brought to Steph Curry in this franchise with the way he continued to conduct himself as if they were still in their prime, as if the margin for error hadn't shrunk considerably. And so now I think it's got to at least be on the table.
I do agree as well. What type of team will you build around Steph? They've been paying that luxury tax for a few years. And listen, it's paid off. Cost the owner some money, but you got championships to show for it. But now, I mean, you were the 10th seed. You barely got in, right? I mean, you're in the play-in. So what are you going to build now while Steph is with you and probably going to finish his career with you? What are you going to invest? Do you take a step back and say, you know what? I'm not going to pay the tax for a little while here. We're gonna back off on that. Or what are you going to put around Steph to try and make or keep them somewhat competitive, or try and make another run by trying to add as much as you can while Steph is still there and playing well? Because he is still playing well, by the way.
He is still playing well. There's some good young players that showed up on that team, but in more supplementary roles. Right. And so unless you can go out and get a real big-time superstar here, the Draymond Green of it all might have to still be someone you keep around just to have some other anchor there alongside Steph Curry. Because, again, we ran into this with the Philadelphia 76ers last year, or so we thought, where it's, hey, if you don't have a ready replacement, if you're going to let James Harden walk out of the building there, or walk himself out of the building there, force himself out of the building there, and you're not going to get adequate value in return, it doesn't feel like you can do this. For the Golden State Warriors, we'll see if any of the young players in that roster would be capable of making that kind of jump. There's been guys over the years, Andrew Wiggins and some others, Jonathan Kuminga, that we look at, enticing athletes, incredible players, but maybe haven't reached the ceiling that we thought that they were capable of there. The Philadelphia 76ers are even more interesting on the other side of this, because it does sound like things have cooled off. We thought Paul George was going to be the instant add there. And that team, when it came to, hey, we need something to happen alongside Joel Embiid, we can't let James Harden walk, Tyrese Maxey happened. Tyrese Maxey took that next step. Yeah, he did. He was one of those players, along with Tyrese Halliburton. We can probably say Jalen Brunson in New York, who made that sort of superstar-esque turn. And if they're not quite that status, however you defined it, they're just a step below that and going in the right direction, given how young he is. But, Dad, for the 76ers, if they're cooling off now all of a sudden on Paul George, and if Zach LaVine is also someone that they're not totally interested in, it makes you wonder what the hell they're actually going to do.
Where are they going? Because obviously you need, first and foremost, Embiid has to be healthy. But they need someone else, right? But we have talked about how teams, it's tough to do the 3 stars anymore, because Tyrese Maxey has turned himself into a star, right?
Yes.
I believe he has. Not at the level, I think, of Embiid, but Embiid needs to be healthy through this. But so, yeah, who else do you get now? Because you want to make that run while you have Embiid still playing some great ball when he's on the court. Of who you're going to get, in what direction. I'm surprised the Paul George thing is over. I thought that would continue, but they are looking for that next piece, and they need that next piece to make that run.
Yeah, Shams Charania over at The Athletic saying that the interest had waned on Paul George in recent days. Paul George himself kind of weighed in on his free agency and his Podcast P, talking about what he was looking for relative to his next team.
For sure, contributing to winning basketball. But, I mean, at this point, I'm not even necessarily, like, it's not even about, like, you know, people saying chasing a championship. Like, it's not that. But it's playing the right style of basketball is what I'm chasing.
And listen, Dad, we could go all the way back to Kevin Durant going to the Golden State Warriors and that sort of same desire where we all looked at that from the outside, but this was someone who also admired the style of basketball that Golden State played, relished that opportunity to go play with those guys until Draymond ticked him off and then he didn't want to stay there anymore, but that's neither here nor there. With Paul George, to me, that's kind of semantics, because if you're going after a team that's playing quality basketball, they're probably in championship contention, and just so might ho-hum happen to be a team like the 76ers or any of the other quality teams that would be vying for his service.
But it could also be a wrong move, because just stay with Durant. Then they get the team, they get together with the Nets thinking it's going to be great, and it's one of the worst all time of getting stars together and getting any kind of payoff.
But I guess that's what I think he means in that part, at least, is it's not going to try and microwave it in that same way. Like, that might be the learning that star players have done now, where you're going into an unknown. That's why he's saying, I value what's presently there, is what I took from that statement.
I guess my point is, well, then have Durant go into Phoenix, where there were players that were there, and that still didn't work out. So I guess my point is, it's still a crapshoot. You can go to a team that has players there, stars there, and try and fit into that. It might work, it might not work. I think Durant has seen both sides.
I think that would be more, to me, the Damian Lillard example of, hey, you finally leave the confines of Portland. Paul George has been on a number of teams. That's not the issue for him here.
Same with Durant.
But for Dame Lillard, I think the Bucks were a more ready-made product than the Suns were at the point that Kevin Durant got over to that team, coming off of what happened with the Brooklyn Nets. And so I look at the Milwaukee Bucks and say, yeah, that was supposed to be a roster where it was, all right, now, Chris Middleton's health went a long way in that, but if you've got Giannis, if you've got Chris Middleton, and you throw Dame Lillard in that role, subbing out for Drew Holiday, who seems to be on the better end of that so far. That was supposed to be better than what we got. And again, injury went so far in how that gelled, but we know they made the coaching change with Adrian Griffin. There was all sorts of things that happened there that you're right. Even on a roster with a player like Giannis, where if you're Paul George going to a team like that or going to a team like the 76ers, you know you don't have to go in there and be the best player. You're still going to be one of the best players, but you're right. It's still always hard to game that even at this point.
All you can do is figure. Quite honestly, it's like any free agent. How do you feel you're going to fit into that situation in any sport, in any team? And then you go and you see how it goes. You see how the chemistry goes. But you're going to one of those teams where he doesn't have to be the star. Well, that's how it kind of was with the Clippers, too. They could spread that out with the old people they had on that roster, especially Kawhi Leonard being the guy, when he's healthy enough to be on the court.
Yes, so he is likely going to leave that perilous situation. The interesting thing now becomes, Dad, if the 76ers don't decide to go after Paul George, because again, you thought, all right, you got a big man, you've got a star guard right now. Putting in one of the premier wing players in the NBA when healthy seems like it would be a great fit for that roster, complementary fit on that team. You got Mark Stein saying Kentavious Caldwell-Pope might be someone that they're interested in there with Orlando, but KCP obviously been a part of championship outfits, been an incredible role player in that sort of 3-and-D wing guy. Is that the route that you would rather go? If you're a 76er fan and you've seen everything that's gone around in the NBA right now with the way that teams that have been successful in recent years have been built, looking at Denver, looking at the Boston Celtics this last year, would you rather say, hey, we got something good with the guys that we've had here, we bring in another supplementary piece to try and offset what we didn't get out of that Tobias Harris contract, or do you try and shoot for the moon? Do you say, hey, Jimmy Butler, who liked it here so much opposite Joel Embiid, seems like you and the head of that franchise down there and Pat Riley might not be on the best terms right now. Do you go after an OG Anunoby who seems like he's been a little bit upset with what's going on with his contract situation in the mix? DeMar DeRozan, LeBron James even, as he gets towards a chance where he could opt out of his deal and hit free agency there. Would you rather go supplement or would you rather go star if you're the 76ers right now?
I'd go as best I can. If that's a star, then it's a star. I mean, Joel Embiid is 30. He's got some time left, but he's got injuries, right? So 30 is how old really in a big man body going through the injury. So how many years do you have left with that? You got to strike what, we talked about the 76ers and the process, which takes place over years. That's when Embiid was younger. Now he's not younger anymore. So I think you got to try and make hay now in the next couple of years. So I would bring in more of a star, more of that established guy that you can count on, that you could spread the wealth and keep Embiid from having to do so much, give some help to Maxey as well. I would get that star. I think you got a couple of years run with Embiid being a dominant guy that he is, as long as he can stay on the court before we see it start to go the other way. So strike while the iron is as hot as can be with those guys.
I'll say this, there could be some interest in some of those other guys. I think the Jimmy Butler reunion is a little romanticized because of the relationship he had with Joel. Yep. And I don't know if at this point, in my mind, what you need for the 76ers is somebody who can take the weight off Joel during the season so he's not as beat up when it gets to the postseason. He got his MVP. It's great to see him try and play all those games and do all that. His body is, I don't think, going to be capable of that on a consistent basis anymore. We've just seen it happen too much where it's ground down at the end of the year. So you need someone that's going to be able to come in and offset that sum. And I think Jimmy Butler, who we've seen, does not prioritize the regular season in that same way. We get the playoff Jimmy thing, which if he wants to say overblown is great, but the proof has been in the pudding the last few seasons. He's effective there, and you could argue, which I've heard people shoe on the other foot, hey, you want someone who can help him put his foot down on the gas in the postseason. But to me, I would rather have a healthier Joel Embiid managed and offset by the presence of another big-time player. That's why I thought Paul George would have been perfect for that.
I agree.
Bring him in there and have him lighten the load during the regular season. So I get the best version of what at his best and when he's healthy, one of the most dominant basketball players on the planet in Joel Embiid. And so if that was someone like a Brandon Ingram, if it is someone like KCP, I think that can be a fine move. But again, it's just a gamble on Joel Embiid's health that at this point is one that more often than not you've been on the losing side of there. So we'll wait to see what happens with the future of that. I can tell you one thing, though. If you're one of these teams looking to go do this, and Golden State, we mentioned, had done it pretty well. Obviously, the 76ers have with some of these guys through the years. Claudia, the NBA draft does not seem to be the place that you're going to go to find marquee talent to come and impact your roster, at least this season, because by most accounts, it sounds like people from the NBA are looking at this as one of the worst NBA draft classes in a while.
Well, we can certainly say there's not as much hype as there was in the past, and the odds sort of reflect that. This is the first time in NBA history. It'll be a 2-day event, by the way, Wednesday and Thursday. But going back to those odds over at the DraftKings Sportsbook, there's some names you probably don't recognize. Donovan Clingan from UConn, the only one you may, and he is making his way up the board. He is second at plus 170, but we have some French basketball players who maybe you're not hearing as much as you heard Wemby's name, Zakaria Chasser, Alex Sarr, I don't know if I said those right.
Say it with conviction.
You have to say it in French ways, and I just won't do that. But Atlanta has the one spot, Washington, Houston from Brooklyn's pick, San Antonio, and then Detroit. But like you said, GoJo, not nearly as much hype around this class.
What a time to go to 2 days.
I know. Weird timing.
Oh, the bad timing award here, right? We're gonna make this even longer on what people are calling the worst draft they've seen in a while. So, and it is. His name was already going to be talked about was Bronny James, right? I mean, that was a name that was going to be talked about. A guy who went from nobody was going to draft him to now supposedly moving up the draft boards. I mean, he's becoming a headline of this, and in due, obviously it's LeBron's kid, but also the fact that this draft, there's just no other name to really talk about. I was just going to say,
man, if you hated the LeBron James coverage on ESPN before, allow me to introduce you to the 2024 NBA drafts coverage of Bronny. Because you're right, it's all they've got at this point as far as juicy stories. And they're going to work hard, Jonathan Givony and the rest of those guys that do this full time, that are the NBA draft analysts over there and other places. They're going to do a great job of trying to tell the story of these players from overseas who are right now the flavor of the NBA.
Yes,
we talked about it. That's why Anthony Edwards received such a warm welcome this postseason, because so many of the best players in the league right now are guys that have come from playing overseas and are coming to the NBA, which is great once they get here. But in the lead up and trying to sell it to a draft product is usually pretty difficult, because even with Wemby, none of us had seen him play outside of a bunch of highlights. And so now with these guys, you've got that combined with the fact that they're also lesser players. Like Alex Sarr, who Claudia mentioned there, is another 7'1" Frenchman.
Right.
But he's not a guy that's got the step out and ball handle game that you've got with someone like Victor Wembanyama. And we talked about this the other, Donovan Clingan from UConn, sort of the same story where, he can be more of a runner, he can run the floor for you there, can have ball handle a little bit, but he's going to have to work to improve his game if he wants to extend and have that three-point threat to be able to draw other bigs out of the lane. He's a good young athlete, and he's the only name we know because UConn's been the dominant force in basketball for the last 2 years.
And also with Wemby, it was like we didn't see him play a lot, but we saw highlights, and it was a 7'4" unicorn.
Yes,
right?
it was very scary to look at.
Wow, wait a minute, this guy's 7'4" and doing that. We don't have that in this draft here to at least hang our hat on the fact that, we haven't seen this guy play, but oh my God, look what he does, and let's see how that incorporates into the NBA. And oh, by the way, it incorporated pretty damn well.
And I think you've seen, there's always signs. We talked about this in the NFL draft this year. Signs of how people view the upcoming classes based on the moves they make either in the draft or free agency. And what do we see this year? Run on quarterbacks early in the first round, because a lot of NFL folks were looking out to next year and saying, I don't know if I trust the product that's coming our way here. Same thing could be said about a team like Oklahoma City, who all of a sudden goes out and makes the trade for Alex Caruso with Josh Giddey before the lead up to the draft, because you're looking and saying, hey, all right, if we're going to supplement help, we're going to need to do it here with the guys that we've already got ready-made in the NBA, even in a day and age where that growth and development of homegrown talent seems to be the flavor.
So, again, what will we see? Will we see this will be about Bronny? Where does he go? Does LeBron, opt out of the player option, just to see what he can do? So it's 3 days after the deadline, 3 days after the draft, to see what goes on there. Who picks up Bronny? Does somebody pick up Bronny to use as a chip to try and get a trade? Or how is that going to work? Because we know Bronny's representation said this isn't going to be a two-way deal. We want a standard contract. He is going to be the headline of this draft.
He's going to be a Laker. We can do all this song and dance about the
But is he going to be a Laker through draft or through somebody else taking him and say, you want him? What are you giving up for him?
Nobody in the NBA where LeBron James and Rich Paul have as much power as they do. And I get sometimes we overstate that. But Rich Paul doesn't just represent LeBron. Clutch Sports is a big-time player in this league.
Yes, they are.
I think the last thing you want to do if you're one of the other front offices there, and you're going to have to deal with them in some form eventually, is tick off that particular group of people with the power they have in the NBA. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying it seems like the runway's pretty cleared out for this. Coming up next, though, let's clear out the runway for a little NFL talk with the offseason. offseason set. We'll look at some of the biggest holes on rosters heading into the 2024 season and find out who is in the best position to offset them next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. With mini camps wrapped up, training camps around the corner, NFL.com's Kevin Patra is telling us what are the biggest holes around the league for different squads. Some of the noticeable ones: Falcons at the top, edge rusher; Steelers, Chargers, receiver; Patriots, all he listed as left tackle, but as a New England fan, I feel like we have a few more holes than that. GoJo, what sticks out to you here?
Yeah, Dad, this is interesting now because we're at this point where in this offseason calendar for the NFL, your team's largely what it's going to be. We're going to get to training camp, and there'll be some injuries, and some of the veterans still sitting at home will have a chance to maybe walk on and, save their bodies. These are guys that know at this point, hey, I don't need to be around for the offseason. I don't need to be around for training camp. But when people start to go down and structure that way, I can slide in. But for the rest of it now, we do get to kind of look out and analyze. And some of the teams that he brought up here, pretty interesting overall. Some of the sexy teams named this year, like the Chicago Bears that everyone's super high on. Certainly the Atlanta Falcons that brought over Kirk Cousins have done everything they've done. The Steelers we've talked a lot about with Mike Tomlin. I'd say this, Dad, the one that pops to me the most, and this is selfish given the nature of the position, but the Miami Dolphins have a lot on their plate this year. Tua Tagovailoa, we think, is going to receive one of those marquee quarterback extensions sometime before training camp gets going for the Dolphins here. I think based on what we've seen in the market, that's probably going to be the case. That group here, interior offensive line gets brought up. Robert Hunt left in free agency for this team. And you look around, there's going to be some new faces on the interior there as well. It looks like at center. On the other side, you've still got some of your homegrown talent there in Robert Jones. But Aaron Brewer taking over at center. Teron Armstead, we know one of the best players in the planet when he's healthy at that position there. And Austin Jackson. So I just say interior offensive line and the depth of that position, because injury has been such a story for this Miami Dolphins team over the last run of years. And when you look at the division that they play in the AFC East, Look around at everyone else who they've got there going through this time and time again. The New York Jets, Quinnen Williams, big money defensive tackle, one of the best players in the NFL right now. New England Patriots, Christian Barmore, big money defensive tackle, one of the best young players in the NFL right now. The Buffalo Bills, Ed Oliver in the interior there, one of the better interior pass rushers in the NFL. And so for a team that plays that same system, we talk about these Shanahan-McVay tree guys all the time. What popped up for the 49ers in their run to the postseason when everything else was going well last year? Interior pressure undermining a shorter quarterback in that system. Even a system that for anyone that's not like familiar or totally understand it, what they do a lot in that system, getting the quarterbacks on the move, the bootleg stuff, all of that's designed to help do two things. Help an offensive line that might not be as skilled man-to-man across the board and help offset a quarterback's physical limitations. Tua Tagovailoa, maybe a little bit better arm, but physically, stature-wise, not that far off from what you're getting with Brock Purdy. And so I look at that team and say, hey, in a big year where you paid those wide receivers and are trying to offset that, and you've always tried to kind of be a little more O-line agnostic outside of that signing of a guy like Teron Armstead, I do worry about pressure up the middle being a thing that could potentially be what knocks Tua off the timing that's made that offense so successful. So to me, that's the one that stands out the most.
We talk about that as a team who's trying to play for something, right? But another team, Washington, and dealing with their O-line as well, right? Yeah. But we don't put them up as much as what we think Miami can do in their division as far as Washington. They did get Biadasz, the center from Dallas, but they're trying to fill in.
Who's a solid player? Tyler Biadasz, a solid player, guy they developed there. And we know going through that Dallas Cowboys program, the one thing they can do, and the reason a lot of people have some confidence in them this year, drafting a rookie to replace Tyron Smith, who's going to wear a gold jacket soon, is because they've developed that position so well over the years.
I think for me, one of the positions I look at are teams as Pittsburgh and wide receiver.
Sure.
Right? I mean, you obviously have George Pickens. Deontay Johnson is gone. You have a quarterback in Russell Wilson who's trying to relive and recapture the day a little bit. But we're always talking about, okay, what kind of weapons do you give him to throw to? And while it was never like, wow, look at the receiving core of Pittsburgh, it's even down a little bit, right? It's not what they've had in the past. So that to me, as Russell Wilson tries to recapture a little bit, to maybe not have, they do have Freiermuth at tight end, which certainly is always a lot of times a quarterback's best friend, but that's a position of concern for me.
Man, the Steelers in general, when you look at this year, an incredibly young offense.
Yeah.
Like outside of the quarterback where you could have Russell Wilson, who's right now penciled in as the starter, Broderick Jones was your first-round pick last year. You may start two rookies on the offensive line in Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier this year. George Pickens was a 2022 draft pick. Najee Harris was a 21 draft pick. Jaylen Warren was a 22 undrafted free agent. So you look at the roster here, and it's a lot of young guys now under the tutelage of a different coordinator, albeit one that has recent coordinator experience at an incredibly high level, was a head coach for his time in Atlanta, all going into this situation. It is a lot put on a very young core that's expected to now go and be the difference as people's frustration in Pittsburgh with them not winning playoff games with a group that young.
And then another group, I wonder if they're going to take a step back before they go forward with the new coach is Harbaugh. And then not just wide receiver and losing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but an offense and losing Austin Eckler as well. So we keep talking about the offensive side of the ball they lost, but the defense was not good either. So I wonder, we keep waiting for what team is going to compete with Kansas City in the AFC West. And I just wonder if the Chargers are going to take a step back before they take a step forward.
To me, the more interesting running back situation is probably in Dallas, though, because that was a position of need at running back behind an offensive line that is going through some change right now, losing two of the pieces that were a part of that starting group when healthy last year. And now your solution to that was, let's get the band back together with Zeke Elliott, which Zeke, listen, the offensive line situation in New England last year was not great. And he was making chicken salad out of chicken, for a lot of the situation there overall with that team as they now transition to a new quarterback, a new regime. I won't put all of that on Zeke Elliott, but we know he's not the every down guy for you anymore.
No, he's not.
Too late in his career to be the workhorse anymore. And so when you look at him and the rest of that running back room in Dallas right now, it does make you wonder for a team who their failings at the end of the season could not run the ball enough to offset and give relief to a passing attack that was one of the best in the NFL for the majority of the season.
Yeah, I agree there. I'm not sure what's going on at that position, but we're not sure what's going on with that team, right? I mean, and what Jerry Jones is doing, because the Dak Prescott situation takes the front page there. But you're right, that running back situation is tedious at best of where they are. And what you started out by saying in this, you're not going to really be able to add anybody where you go, wow, look at that ad. You would have to be able to add a free agent that's sitting at home that all of a sudden plays out of their mind a little bit. Or you get a rookie that you drafted, and we get it every year, 3rd round guy, 4th round guy, maybe an undrafted guy that comes out of the gate strong. That helps. But for the most part, this is your team. So to have a glaring hole at this point, and every team has a bit of a hole, but if you have a glaring hole, it's difficult to fill at this point.
And I think glaring holes for team with expectations. That's why I go back to the Dolphins one
I would
being
agree.
most concerning, just because they're at a critical juncture right now where, especially when they sign Tua, it's going to be a lot harder to supplement the rest of this roster around him. There are going to be areas, and offensive line has seemed to, in the early going, been the area that, again, I don't want to make it sound like they haven't invested at all. Like, some of the guys that they brought in there have been higher draft picks, and Tyron Smith was a guy they spent free agent money on. But outside of that, it's been an offense that's had to try and cover that up because of injury largely. And you wonder, now that you've spent all that money on receiver, would the next thing be, hey, pay Tua, and then maybe down the road you could structure this so you can get more O-line help? But defensively, they're going to need guys. They're waiting to see this year, Jalen Phillips, the rest of that edge group that spent the end of last year on injured reserve with all those knee injuries, are they going to come back, and is it going to look the same? New coordinator down there this year since Vic Fangio's up with the Eagles now. Christian Wilkins no longer there out in Las Vegas. So they have a lot of things up in the air right now, but we know the lines of scrimmage tend to be the damning part of this Dolphins team.
I wonder on the other side of this, if you look at contending teams, real contending teams that we talk about, who did the best at preserving or upping their roster? I look at a team like Philadelphia, because sometimes it's re-signing your own, right? With Smith and with Brown, and then bringing in Saquon Barkley. So as I'm looking at the contending teams out there, I'm trying to figure out who maybe did better. As again, you have to include re-signing your own, because we're not sure what's going on in San Francisco right now, right? With Brandon Ayuk.
Yep. You know what that sounds like? Topic for tomorrow. Contending teams that did the most to improve their stock heading into the 2024 NFL season. All we can get to, because we got time, baby. It is getting close here. We are almost in July here, and y'all are going to have some fun with us here. But coming up next, we got a man who probably never gets much of a chance to have real time off at this point in the sports calendar, or any time of the sports calendar. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey going to stop by the show and talk about the future of college athletics next here on GoJo and Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here, and we've talked a lot about the athletic events over the weekend. One we have neglected so far, but we get to now.
Yeah.
Men's College World Series going on in Omaha here, and an absolute barn burner, a big-time Game 3 coming up between Texas A&M and Tennessee here. So who better to talk about that and the rest of the state of college athletics than SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, who's kind enough to join us now here. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
I'm well. Good morning. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
No, great to have you here. And let's start with that. I mean, so many people focus on football, certainly when it comes to your conference, but sitting here right now, what does it mean to you to see what's going on with both the present SEC teams dominating in the Men's College World Series, as well as some future SEC members coming up this summer with what we saw in women's softball with Oklahoma and Texas?
You know, we've had a pretty remarkable June on the national championship front, and you referenced what happened in softball with future members, both outdoor track and field championships. And it's a reminder at a time when we're in the Olympic qualifying phase, how much that means to this nation. And then we had half the College World Series field from our conference, and the ACC had the other half, and our teams moved through with really great success. And it's the second consecutive year, 3 out of the last 4 years, we had both teams in the College World Series final from the Southeastern Conference. And it speaks to the expectations, the support, the talent level, the coaching, and to have our two fan bases here from Texas A&M and from Tennessee fully engaged in the competition is really fun to experience.
A few stats on this, and that's being an SEC winner this year, so it's going to be 5 straight years of that. You're talking 10 different SEC programs have reached a College World Series since 21. Total of 88 former SEC players were on the opening day roster in Major League Baseball, which is 32 more than any other conference. So Mike and I went to Notre Dame. We don't say we're a football school anymore because the fencing team has won 13 national titles. So Notre Dame's a fencing school. Is the SEC a baseball conference?
Well, you have to shout out lacrosse at Notre Dame too, right? Because they won the national championship. So we'll give you that. It's a bit of an everything conference, and that's a little bit of a trite saying, but I think we've won 6 straight indoor track and field championships on the women's side. We had the 2 finalists in women's tennis this year between Texas A&M and Georgia. The Auburn team won the men's golf championship 2nd year in a row, Florida last year. And you could go on and on. One of the rewarding things for me personally is a product of the COVID year was Kentucky's volleyball team winning the first ever national championship in the sport of volleyball. One captured by an SEC team. So we've had success across the board. Baseball, I think, draws out in a way the best. It's the end of the year. Once you get through today, we don't lose a game for like another 60 days. So you get to just celebrate with pride. And we have great crowds, great facilities. I think young people want to test themselves as competitors at the highest level. And what you see in the Southeastern Conference through baseball is the clearly highest level of competition at the college level.
There's been no doubt about that, talking to Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, on the eve of this Game 3. And Greg, zooming out a little bit, big picture, we talked about Texas and Oklahoma on the softball side of things. They're getting ready to become full-fledged members July 1st of this year. We know you guys are no stranger to adding more teams to the conference. We saw it most recently was Missouri and Texas A&M. But in this current juncture of college athletics, what have been the biggest challenges about preparing for a move like this?
First, we've had a long, long time, and that's not something that's typical. So it's been 3 years since the announcement of our growth to 16 to the point of entry, which comes next Monday, a week from today, officially. That's provided a lot of time to prepare. I think we've used that time wisely. We have watched during the intervening period of time. So from July of 21 until today, think about all of the conference shifting that's taken place now around us. We watch and we have interest in what's taking place, but did not feel the need to move given the strength that we've built. We don't have the geographic challenges that some have. I think our biggest challenge remains how are we going to schedule football games over the long term? We did a really effective piece of work in introducing or reintroducing or maintaining some key rivalry games through expansion and staying at 8 conference games. We can't do that forever, so we have schedules in football set through 24 and 25. And then come the 26 season, we have yet another decision to make. So that one remains important for both of you just around us as conferences change their basketball scheduling philosophies. We've had to look at adapting. So plenty of time. That gives you plenty of time to think about things. We've also had changes around us relating to legislation and litigation that have required attention. So it's not as if we just get to work on one project at a time in our day jobs.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that legislation been the story of the summer, certainly. House versus the NCAA is the big case that everyone's known and talked about. And all of this stands to change a lot of the structure around the sport, as you know, between name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, even the idea of collective bargaining. You're not the only voice in this, but you're certainly one of the most powerful and respected voices in these conversations. If you yourself have the chance to hold the pen and create how this new world of college athletics is going to look with name, image, and likeness, with the transfer portal, and with potentially collective bargaining, what's the best outcome of that in your eyes?
Well, I think we have to settle this down. We need not be in a constant game of catch up. And I think you have to take a step back and ask, what is it that we expect out of college athletics? If we continue to expect some kind of growth in education and development, we should emphasize that reality. If we continue to expect March Madness to be a broad opportunity, we should say those things and say them clearly. And then those decisions begin to inform the future. And I'm one who thinks those can be 2 anchor points. Now, because of state legislative activity, we're in this name, image, and likeness world. That has to be defined. If I had the pen, that would be driven more internally through our athletics programs, creating opportunities, managing with a level of transparency and integrity, while providing support for young people so they don't get caught in some traps by those who are unregulated, unoverseen in this emergence of collectives. So that's one. I'm a person who does not think our student athletes need to be employees to be able to be well supported. In fact, if you look now at the rights, if you will, so I hear a lot about rights, the transfer flexibility is maximized. The economic opportunities in many ways are maximized as well, particularly for those that are high performers. And the support that underpins that activity, the mental wellness care, the straight up health care, the academic support, the pick me up when I stumble in life care, if you will, which is a general application, nutritional support. There's not a student athlete wondering where their next meal is coming from. Those would continue. So there is much that's still right about what's done in college athletics. We have to figure out these economic aspects, and part of the House legal settlement is going to compel those things to happen sooner rather than later.
We have no doubt that things are going to change drastically because of what you mentioned. So many other things still pending there legally, and that makes for a very busy rest of the summer, I'm sure, for you before we get to the fall. But enjoy in the meantime, certainly what's going on with the Men's College World Series right now. Greg, we can't thank you enough for your time and your insight this morning. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the conversation. We look forward to the game this evening.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Greg. Appreciate it. We could talk for hours with him.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
there's just so much to talk about.
It's where we're at right now. And he said it. He doesn't have, and you don't have, any one of the major decision makers in college sports. You're not attacking just any one problem. And I shouldn't even say it like that, because it shouldn't be that adversarial. You're not trying to organize just one set of things. You're trying to organize a bunch of incredibly complex issues all at once that are going to affect the future of the sport.
I was going to ask him if he was going to be in the college video game to get his $600, if the commissioners would get mentioned.
That is true. You know what? Something tells me even if he didn't get the 600, he's probably going to sleep fine.
Gonna be okay.
Probably going to eat well for the weekend.
All right.
All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato. It's time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you miss us there, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio is where you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic. And if you miss us there, or any of our great guests, thank you to SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, who stopped by in the last segment to talk about the Men's College World Series going on, Game 3 tonight, certainly the future of the entire collegiate model and the landscape.
Which he's a big part of.
Yeah, incredibly light, easy fare. You can catch that entire conversation and more wherever you get our podcast, as well as right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Let's get to this. We had, as we mentioned, our Golic Family SubPar Classic charity golf outing this weekend back in South Bend, Indiana. And it was exciting. We had the competition on the courts, which I still maintain. Yes, your team won, but me versus you, this was a team effort here. Again, much like the great Manning and Brady battles of yesteryear, it involves everybody.
What would you have been saying if your team beat mine? You'd have been saying that you beat me.
They'd had to bleep some things out. That being said, we had the ability while we were out here to actually engage in some head-to-head competition after the round here, and this is what it looked like.
And now we get to cap it off with a little bit of golf. Oh, yeah! Seriously? Well, that means we're kicking their ass. Is what that means. Soft as baby shit. I'm right here. Right here? I'm right here. I'm right here. All right, every charity golf outing always has longest drive, closest to the pin. We thought we'd remix that and throw a little football in here and go close to the pin. I haven't seen a Nerf Whistler since I was like 9 years old. My nostalgia is through the roof right now.
I've had 7 surgeries on this shoulder. How do you expect me to throw it?
That's not a concern for me. I'm here to win.
I get it. You pick events where you know I'm kind of hobbled a little bit.
Yes. 100%. Okay. I am not above beating an old man in public.
Feel good about yourself.
I feel great.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Wind's going right to left a little bit. In our face. Not gonna lie, I felt really good about that. I wasn't sure how this was gonna go at the beginning. That's kind of nice. I might be him. I might be him. I don't know. I don't know. Oh. No way.
The Rick Barry.
He almost dunked it. I mean, can you really feel that good doing it underhand? I gotta do something right. That was actually really good.
I threw it underhand and
I'm not gonna lie. That was amazing. I truly, Claudia, I never expected that in a million years. My dad walking up already had the pre-made excuse. He was rubbing his shoulder and working it out there, trying to limp up to the starting line and completely rope-a-doped us.
Underhand, though. Like, that. I guess that it's still the throw, but I feel like, no?
Oh, she has no respect for you as a man.
No, I do. It was incredible, Senior. Claudia, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
And for anybody out there that wants to rip me, Google Rick Barry shooting free throws, okay? Because he shot him underhand. And you know what? When it goes in the basket, it counts the exact same amount as when you shoot it overhand.
I'm not going to lie. In 2024, I'm not sure going to the old-time basketball player shooting underhand for a defensive cool and prowess in an age that rewards that's going to work out for you.
But you know what I had to do? I had to adapt to advance. Right? I can't throw it over my hand. I can't throw it like a regular football. My shoulder won't allow it. I had to find a way to win, and that's exactly what I did. Just like my team against your team, me against you, I beat you like a drum all day long.
Hey, it's like a drum there. It was a great lucky shot. I commend you on that.
Lucky shot. Now, mine's lucky. If you won, you would have said it was skill.
I was happy to see you didn't hurt yourself. As a son who loves his father, I'm glad you got out of that.
Can't give credit, can you?
And it was fantastic. You know what? Speaking of giving credit where it's due, Claudia, let's get to that. Andy Reid, cheeseburgers. We don't have to say anymore.
Give this man a trophy because he said he had 60 cheeseburgers when filming a commercial with Patrick Mahomes for the State Farm commercial. Take a listen.
We did a hamburger shoot, and I made a pact to myself, just being a cheeseburger connoisseur that I wouldn't use the spit bucket. But after about the 60th cheeseburger, I had to go there. Yeah, I had to go there. So I used a spit bucket. That wasn't the funniest part. The funniest part was the producer here. He wanted me to try to talk and do my lines with my mouth full of the cheeseburger. And Pat's sitting right in front of me. And so I'm trying to do this, and there's cheeseburgers flying everywhere at these guys. And they couldn't hold a straight face. I mean, they were dying laughing. Finally, Pat goes, "Cut it, we're not doing this."
So there's no way he ate the whole cheeseburger, though, right?
No, I think it was bites.
Yeah,
I think it was bites. So
Okay.
listen, again, just another thing with food that Andy Reid and I have in common, because for years on the show at ESPN with Mike and even me, you and Trey, I would do the trick where I would stuff my mouth with food, try and say a sentence and see if people could figure out what I'd say. So I've been doing that forever. But also, I did the exact same thing. The pride factor came in years ago. I did a Pizza Hut commercial. And in the commercial, I would have to take a bite of pizza. And they put a bucket there. And I didn't know at this point. I hadn't done a food commercial. They're like, yeah, so between you, because we're going to do a lot of takes, between each take, you can spit it out. I'm like, spit pizza out? I said, there's no way on God's green earth I can spit out food. I'm going to eat the food. I am going to eat because each time it had to be a new piece. And it was just a bite. Just like for Andy, I think it was 60 bites of the burger. So yeah, I didn't have 60 takes. I didn't have to do it 60 times, but I never used a spit bucket once. I refused. I'm not doing it.
No,
can't do it.
I think that's the proper approach. I think that's
it. Got to be a lot for Andy though. That 60 times
for
is a
sure.
lot.
Listen, we want to protect Andy from himself. It's like a football coach. You got to take away the helmet from the player sometime. You got to take a cheeseburger away from the Andy Reid at times. But this reminds me of people will go and do those wine tastings and they'll spit them out over time.
Right.
I've done one of those with a group of my friends, and the amount of shame that we threw on the one person who decided to use the spit bucket that night was too much. You got to just accept it. If you're not willing to go there and get your hands a little bit dirty, or in that case, get your teeth a little bit red during the tasting, you're not a real wino. You're not really about that life. And I need to see more from you here. So I commend Andy Reid. I commend you for valuing the product in front of you enough to respect the game here. Claudia, speaking of respecting the game, let's get to the third. What do we got?
Yeah, one of the things I love to see is athletes dressing up and doing such things like Justin Jefferson and Joe Burrow did, walking the Vogue World Runway on Sunday in France. Wemby was there, Jaylen Brown, Diggs, Russell Westbrook, some other athletes. But if you're not watching on DraftKings Network or YouTube, I don't think this is their first time, because Jefferson and Burrow are strutting their stuff in black tuxes, and they look good. Well, not tuxes. They're like open-chested. I think Joe Burrow has his back open, too. I can't quite see
It's like a hospital gown.
Either way, they look good, though.
Do they? Do they?
Yes,
I mean,
they're
they look
rocking
walking
it.
at you. Claudia, they look good walking at you, but walking away, Joe Burrow's back is exposed in a suit.
Honestly, this could be kind of sick. Fellas, are we doing open backs?
Oh.
This has always been for the ladies. Are the fellas going to get to show off the back muscles a little bit?
What do you think about that, Claudia?
I said, Claudia, you're just saying they look good here.
Joe Burrow can do whatever he wants. Same with Justin Jefferson, but there's some dudes out there that should not be rocking the open back. All respect.
Yeah, what about Mike and I? Could we pull it
Yeah,
off?
of course you. Yeah, you guys would look just as good. Yeah, rock it.
You know where they missed the boat? Good-looking guys, Burrow, Jefferson, wide receiver, quarterback. Who's one of the hottest names out there right now? How is Jason Kelce not in that? How are you not duding up Jason Kelce and having a walk there?
He was busy.
Understood.
He was at Wembley. He was at far more important business than some silly fashion show.
Because you got to make something for him that pops the top, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you forget just the open back there.
How about the open belly?
That is true. You go open,
the open belly.
See, it's a shout out to Chance Warmack, one of the OGs and the originators, one of the real modern era rolled up jerseys for the big guys.
Rolled up suit, rolled up tux. Oh, that's it.
See, and I know Zeke Elliott did this a little bit, but we're not talking about for the skinny folks. We're talking about this
with guys with boilers. Yeah, big old boilers.
You know what? Forget dad bods. We're in a full blown gut era. We want power kegs out here at Fashion Week.
It takes work to get that thing, so show it off.
Invite us next time to Fashion Week, you cowards out there. I saw everyone in Cannes or Con, however you pronounce it. We'll be there next year. Bellies out for everybody. In the meantime, download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave our bellies a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow.